Hi, I'm Joe Connolly to introduce you to a star financial advisor, the founder of Her Money, Jean Chatzky, who's been on the Oprah Channel, on the Today Show. She's written many books. And Jean has also just started a new show on WCBS News Radio with Soledad O'Brien called Everyday Wealth. And producer Neil A. Carousso will join me in this talk about money with Jean. And first, Jean, I'd like to ask you, we'll focus today on financial advice for business owners. What are the top two or three financial mistakes that you see business owners make?
First of all, hi, Joe. Thanks for having
Hey.
me. I think one of the mistakes is just not setting out a plan that contains the amount of money that you're going to need to get yourself not just up and running, but give yourself enough runway to experience and establish some success, particularly right now with so many people joining the great resignation, leaving their workplaces. We've seen a lot of people, particularly women, launch businesses, hang out a shingle, take their skills and try to turn it into a revenue stream for themselves. And if you can do it with a client or two under your belts, that's fantastic. But you need to also understand what it's going to cost you, not just to get going, but to keep going as you gain some ground. So that's number one. I would
Just
say
on
this.
that one, it's interesting because it can be like you're operating out of the cash register and you never, it's like the old sign, this is the faster I go, the behinder I get. And I know some small businesses operate that way, right? So the plan will get that off your back.
Right. The plan will help you. Look, I'm a numbers person. I take heart in the numbers, and I find numbers really comforting when it comes to my own personal finances, but when it comes to the finances of my business, because numbers don't lie. They tell you where you are. They tell you what you need to do in order to succeed. But a lot of people are just afraid to look at the numbers in their life and in their business, and they need to get over that fairly quickly. The second mistake that I see people making, especially when they come out of large companies,
Mhm.
is to continue to operate that way. And you got to be scrappy, especially when you're bootstrapping. I remember early on in my business, I started working with a guy who had come out of a big investment bank, and we wanted to do some focus grouping. And his idea was, well, you hire a focus group company. And my idea was, no, you send out some feelers through your social channels and your newsletter, and you ask people to show up for a Zoom call that costs you nothing, or it predated Zoom. I think it was some sort of a WebEx or something. But we have to be very conscious of every dollar that we're spending. And the third thing I would say is, don't underestimate how important hiring is and how difficult it is. Particularly those first few hires are so important. And right now, especially with the labor market so tight, you're going to want to make sure that you get it right. And I would say try to put into place some sort of a trial period. If you can get somebody to come and work with you for a couple of months on a freelance basis, on a contract basis, before you put them on payroll, before you put them on salary, do it, because you don't want to go down that employee road when you're uncertain.
These are the types of answers that have made Gene so popular and successful, specific, not theoretical. I love this idea that you've spoken about to try to transition from selling your time or selling each widget to selling your reputation instead. What are you getting at there, Gene? What's that about?
Boy, I mean, I feel like I've built my business this way. I spent a lot of time, 25 years on the Today Show. I built a reputation as somebody who makes money understandable. And now I have applied that in a number of different ways, helping companies talk to the women in their audience, helping companies talk to their employees all about money, right? And so you figure out what your secret sauce is. You figure out what people think or say, oh, she's really good at that. And then you look at, okay, how can I monetize that? I mean, I could try to make a better wallet. There are a lot of people making wallets. Wallets are related to money, but that's not what I'm good at. I'm good at the explanation.
That. So what's the phrase? Where's the beef? In this case, it would be, what's the that?
Right. What's the that? Some people say, what's your superpower? Right? Everybody has a superpower. You got to know what yours is. And often it's the thing that other people will tell you you're really good at. So pay attention when they compliment you.
Right. And super skill is also sometimes how that's referred to. Neil.
Thanks, Joe. Jean, you mentioned the Great Resignation earlier, which is really outstanding when you look at that. From a business owner's perspective, how do you manage that turnover?
Boy, oh boy, it is hard, and I've experienced some of it at HerMoney just this year. I think you're always looking for new candidates. I think you're always meeting with people that you think you might want to bring on board, even if you don't have a job for them right now. But I also think it's really important to try to be managing and encouraging the talent that you have. Yes, people are changing jobs for money. The Great Resignation really has, it has a couple of elements, but one big element are hospitality workers, food service workers who are really going across the street to make a couple of additional dollars every hour. But if you've got people on your team that you want to help grow, that you want to encourage to grow, you need to know what they want. Right? If you're not asking them what they want, then they're going to look for what they want elsewhere. Try however you can to, if it's important to you to keep them, to provide them that. And then I think it's just important for us to realize wages are going up. And benefits are important. And if you are employing people, you need to pay attention to, particularly for our younger workers, what's going to make them not just feel valued, but emotionally and mentally supported and healthy. The Gen X workers in particular, Gen Z workers rather, in particular, have had a really tough go of it.
Yeah, and that speaks to management and leadership too, Jean. When you look at someone who's just starting a business, and particularly younger people, what are the principles that you teach that people should really look at as they're growing their passion? Because they start in, they're very passionate about something, maybe they have a solution to a problem, but the financial principles really have to be at the core of that first year, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said at the beginning, you want to make sure that you've got enough money to give yourself some runway. I would be, honest in your expectations of what you'll be able to produce, what you'll be able to earn. You want to, as a small business owner, as a startup person, you want to be really conscious of the fact that your own personal finances, and in particular your credit, are going to provide the backbone for any money that you borrow to get this business off the ground. Many small businesses rely on their own credit cards, but even those that establish lines of credit, your personal credit will be taken into account. So keep that as clean as absolutely possible. And then I would also say, realize what you can't do. Realize what you're not good at. And as you start to bring in other people to support you, whether they're employees or contractors or freelancers, look for people who do those things better than you do. Don't be threatened by the fact that they have skills that you don't. I hire people in their 20s. I do it all the time. And I do it because I'm going to lean on them for their social media skills. I'm going to lean on them when it comes to, I understand they grew up in a digital world that I did not grow up in, that they're more comfortable helping me get on TikTok than I would be getting on TikTok myself. And so I think we have to understand what we're not good at and support ourselves that way.
Joe?
Jean, do you think that business owners are fundamentally different in any way from non-business owners?
I think they're more optimistic. I think business owners have an inherent sense that this is going to work, that I can do this. They're more confident in their own abilities. That can be good and that can be bad, right? I mean, if you're overly confident, you can lead yourself astray. But I do think they're different in that way. Some business owners just don't want to work for anybody else. I think there's definitely a breed like that. I think it's a growing breed, particularly now. That's never been me. I feel like I have many bosses because my clients are all my bosses. But I do know entrepreneurs who are that way.
What advice do you have for new business owners or any business owner on selling and negotiating price? And you can talk for an hour and we'll come back and turn off the tape. I mean,
No,
those are
I
two
don't
huge
think it's
topics.
any different than negotiating for salary.
Right.
You got to do your research. You have to understand what is the going rate in the market. What are people willing to pay for your services? What are they paying other people for similar services? And then you've got to just implement a rate increase. And it's not when you are running a business, it's not that you're necessarily asking for more money, although that may be the case depending on the clients that you service. But if you're selling something, if you're selling a widget, as you said before, it may just be time to increase the price of that widget or make that widget a little smaller. It's not only Kellogg's or other cereal companies that can indulge in a little shrinkflation. We gotta figure out ways to improve your bottom line.
You've said that women tend to apologize for things more than men. What do you mean, and how do you stop that?
Have you ever played tennis or pickleball with a woman? Right? I mean,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
you hit the shot. Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, I do it too, and people have told me to stop. I think it is habit for many of us. I think it's rote for many of us, and I do think we should try our best not to apologize. One way to get around it is, instead of being apologetic, just be grateful. Say thank you when you are inclined to say I'm sorry. I know it doesn't sound like a substitution that works, but it often does.
And one more before we get back to Neil, because it ties in with sales and negotiating. Do you have any advice when you put out a proposal and the client likes it and the potential client likes it, but they can't afford this? It's just too expensive. I can't pay anything like this.
I just actually had a situation like this, and I walked. And I walked because the industry, no matter what industry you're in, is not as big as you necessarily think. And if you're willing to cut deals with one client, it's only a matter of time before the other client starts to ask for that same deal, and all of a sudden your margins aren't what they once were. So I think it's a slippery slope. If you can figure out a way to have additional benefit through that relationship so that it makes sense to cut your price, then you can do it. But you also have to realize you can't serve everybody. And there may just be times when you have to say, I'm sorry, this has been great, but we're not going to be able to do this anymore.
That's great advice. Neil, one
Yeah,
more.
Joe and I have heard a lot from business owners who have said, they want to focus more on the big clients that are going to bring in more money and not necessarily take on everybody because, like you said, you can't do everything. So that's interesting. Let me ask you about risk. How do you manage what to take on and look at your return on investment? When you make those decisions, what should you be looking at? I mean, this could be taking on a client. This could be, considering investing in something in your business. What do you look at in terms of making sure that you're getting the right ROI?
I think the factor that people don't look at too often is the time involvement. It's very easy to quantify the money. You know the money's coming in, you look at the number, you see the contract, you know how much of that is going to go to expenses. What's a lot harder to quantify is how much of my time is this going to take? And if you have a sense of what how much you should be bringing in per hour, how much you should be bringing in per day, it's going to be a lot easier for you to decide if it's worth trading this amount of your time for money. And it doesn't have to be your time, right? There may be deals where you are taking on a client and you understand that bringing on a client is going to mean hiring somebody to service that client, and that is also fine. But then we look at, okay, how much is that going to cost? How much are the benefits for that person going to cost? How much of my time is it going to take to get that person up to speed? Time is the place where people get stuck.
And here's Neil with the question we both wanted to ask here to close. Neil?
Well, Joe, you mentioned earlier about Jean's new show, Everyday Wealth, which is on WCBS 880 on Sundays at 11. Jean, what do you hope to accomplish out of this new show? Who are your listeners that you want to reach?
The listeners are anybody who is looking to make more of their money. According to my definition, money's just a tool. Money, not just a tool, but it's an important tool that we all need to use wisely in order to get what we want out of our lives. That may involve investing it. It may involve saving it. It may involve protecting it with different financial instruments or insurance, preserving it with an estate plan. Anybody who cares about those issues is somebody who should be listening to this show that I'm hosting with Soledad O'Brien, and that's being brought to you by the folks at Edelman Financial Engine. So I'm very excited about it.
And we're so happy to have you and Soledad on WCBS. And it's been great to talk with you. You give great advice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, Neil.